following podcast is intended for an adult audience only.
It contains strong language, strong opinions, and themes of a sexual nature.
So if you are under 18, or indeed difficult to please, this isn't the podcast for you. Welcome to Varying Degrees, a BDSM podcast. It's the return you've all been waiting for. I remember last time when we said, we'll see you next month. Oh, indeed we will. Indeed did we shite as COVID reared its ugly head. But I'm back with CoolHands and we're here to discuss where we've been, what we've been up to, and where we're going. So, where have you been, CoolHands?
I, like the rest of, or most of the nation, have been in my home for the last 12 months. In my home. Pretty much. It's coming on 12 months now, isn't it? Yeah. I've been at home. That doesn't mean the kink journey stopped. It's certainly changed. It's certainly been looking different. So that's where I've been. As to how I've been, I suppose comparatively good. You know, got a lot to be thankful for. Not in a bad position personally compared to what it could be. So, yeah, I've been here and I've been good. Thanks for asking, Burns. How about yourself, mate?
Aye, it's been interesting.
Well, you've moved.
Aye. Well, I was going to say it's been interesting living mostly online these days, but physically moved, aye. So that kind of was an interesting one. Moving house during the lockdown, but it came with a move of job and all of that. So there was quite a lot of upheaval there, and it was quite stressful. And I know that's been a big theme of the lockdown.
And relationships and everything that's going on over the last sort of 12 months. You know, it's been a big strain on everybody, hasn't it, in every sense?
Aye, indeed it has, and a lot of people have seen relationships change, or some have ended, and my thoughts definitely go out to those who have had difficulty, or have indeed lost people, and especially those that have lost family members. I know that's been a very tough time, and that's got it to you, But I've been incredibly lucky that I've had my ER with me, and she's been a godsend. She really has, just keeping me sane, which is difficult,
Would you say that the pandemic and the upheaval has impacted on the kink dynamic aspect of your relationship at all, without going into too much detail? Do you think these times, and when we go for a year like this, it has an impact on the kink aspect within your relationship?
Personally, I'd say no. I was going to say she's been keeping me sane. She's also been keeping me safe and consensual. We joke there for the BDSM purists, but I think it's a monogamous relationship, so we've not been impacted by, and we live together as well, so it's not been impacted so much as, say, a distance relationship might. I've known people who are on the poly scene, and I think they have been particularly impacted in terms of not being able to see a partner. But on that note, and just before I kind of go to you for your thoughts on it, I've recently attended a workshop online, so still, trying to keep things going and do things and remain reasonably active as much as you can with events closing down or not running, for obvious reasons. It was there's rope bottoming workshop, and there was a bit of a discussion in it in terms of lockdown and how that's affected people, because they were saying there were discussions on how to vet or choose potential play partner, what the pitfalls and considerations, and all that. But one of the presenters was saying that you might live with your partner if you are lucky, as I am myself, but you don't always feel like doing something. Now, it's also complicated by the fact that myself and my partner are still working, you know. So I'm still going out to work. My partner's working from home. So either way, at the end of the day of work, you know, you might be feeling a bit more tired or whatever. I mean, I don't know if it's different for anybody that's been furloughed, you know, where you're literally not having to do the work, whatever. But I suppose that comes with its own set of challenges and issues that do you know what I mean? So you know, it's hard for me to say anything really about that. But aye, they were just saying, you know, you don't always feel up to it, you know, and that's okay. You know, you're not necessarily doing your kink stuff 24/7. You might say, actually, it's been a bit much lately, and a lot of people say about sort of finding the time. You know?
I get what you're saying. It's people have been fortunate if you're together, and if you're not able to form a support bubble like that's been allowed through most of this, then you're kind of stuck out on your own almost, or not getting your fix. But you make a really good point a moment ago about an online workshop, because everything has shifted. I think that's been a major change from the kink communities in the last sort of 10 to 12 months. There's this huge shift online. We've all become virtual communities. There used to see people that will occasionally post at people like, oh no, I don't get involved in the actual community, I only do online. People, oh, I only do online, I don't get involved in it. But now we're all stuck online.
That's right. See, for
Mm.
me, I think it's quite a useful tool, kind of in between, say, munch. It's quite useful to kind of keep in contact with people, and I know there's a certain amount of chat and friendly kind of waffle almost, that goes on.
This is the good thing, you've done our local community a really good service in you've set up a Discord server, haven't you, for our local community, which is, I think, has been an absolute lifesaver for some people. So, for anyone who's listening to this who has set up a Discord or similar style community for their own local community, as for having to go, digital, I take my hat off to them, because I know from you the amount of work and effort and faff that went into that. So, to you and to everyone who has taken their community, their physical community, and created an online space for it, I absolutely take my hat off, because, I know from talking to you and others what goes into sort of setting that up and maintaining it. The other thing I would say is, although people haven't seen each other physically in a long time now, people that don't usually communicate once a month at a munch are probably communicating more frequently online now than they were a year ago. So although no one's had face-to-face contact, there's probably a lot of people that have communicated with each other more than they used to when they just bump into each other once a month at a month. Do you get what I'm saying?
I think you're right, and I would certainly say that thanks go out to quite a number of people. I'm not going to name personally, take ages, but people in adjacent local areas who have chipped in with advice on Discord stuff, and there's been a number of people that have helped out, and it's interesting to see the varying formats, the way that people in a different area run their event slightly differently.
So here's my question to you, right? So now that everything has gone online, and including education and workshops, and I want to talk more about that in a moment. But now that everything's gone online and you're getting more people attend munches online that wouldn't necessarily have gone in person for one reason or another, do you think that once everything opens back up and it is, I'm doing air quote things, normal again, do you think it will lead to more people attending events in their local communities? Do you think the communities are going to lose a lot of people? Do you think there'll be a lot of people that won't go back to their local communities after this? Like, what do you think the kink landscape is going to look like in the new normal?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that it would drive people away. I think if anything, it would bring more people in. because one of the things that I've seen for a few people online is saying, oh, I wanted to come along, had every intention of coming along to the actual munch, the physical munch, but I couldn't for some reason or another, but then we've got this kind of introduction, which is perhaps a little less intimidating because you're not face to face with a big group of people. And I think for some people that can be very intimidating when oh no, there's all these people, what if they don't like me? Whereas if it's just on a screen, you can just turn it off. You can go way much easier.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But I mean, I think there will be a lot of people who might, or there will be some people inevitably who won't return to the community afterwards just because of life and stuff would have changed so much. A lot of people's lives would have changed over the last by the time it comes to events being in person and regular again and back to normal. I think that so many people's lives would have changed and people would have, I think there'll be a lot of new faces, but I think there'll also be a lot of absent faces for one reason or another, as is the nature of life in any community after a time of upheaval. It's just the way it is. It's like that, and it's the way it is, as Run DMC. So. You said about classes, because we've got to look for the positives. As the other good thing about everything being virtual is the access to education has never been so easy. Whereas there might have been, whereas sort of a year and a half ago, certain people might have only done 1 or 2 online workshops a year or a handful of online workshops a year focusing on in-live events and traveling and whatever, and the rest of our lives. Now that people are locked down at home and they can't teach in person or they can't do events in person or performances or demos or whatever, they're so many different things that have gone online now. Where they can't do this in person, they've looked to do more online. So where there might have been a performer that you couldn't see so easily a year and a half ago, or somebody who is say a rope, teaching rope or workshop, or workshops on consent and ethical non-monogamy and also everything, where you might not have had a chance to get to that a year and a half ago. The pandemic has caused all of it to go online, meaning it's so much more accessible from your own home and affordable, so much cheaper as well. That can only be a good thing. The fact that education has become so much through necessity. Education has become accessible and affordable.
I think it's probably very good also for people who have struggled to get out to stuff. Perhaps if someone's got a disability or some other issue that prevents them travelling or
just income, mate. It's expensive. It's expensive.
Well, that as well. But I was thinking, because I've seen a lot online with lockdown stuff. There's been quite a few people that have been saying about how a lot of provisions that were made for able-bodied people, speaking as one myself, like there is a massive amount of privilege there, and I'm just accepting that myself. I'm a privileged man. I'm in a privileged position, but like things like working from home and stuff, people were saying that for years people have been asking about this and wanted this and kind of been denied, and now because it's now affecting more able-bodied people, they're just kind of handed it. And I'm not sure exactly where the blame lies there, and that's perhaps a discussion not really for us. That's a discussion for people with that lived experience. But I do find it quite interesting, and anything that makes these things a bit more inclusive, the better, really.
Let's go lighten the mood up a little bit then. So what have you been up to, without giving us too many details, as it were? What are your top tips for keeping the kink alive in lockdown?
A lot of it's been rope stuff, but then I think as well, even if you're not interested in rope, what I would say is find something that you are interested in, pursue it and learn a bit more. Use your time to dive a little bit deeper into it. One of the things that E00 did around Christmas, I think it was something like the 12 TKs of Christmas or something. She was doing all these ties on me, these different variants, and you know, we got some really great pictures out of it. And what did you enjoy? What felt good to you? Why did this feel better? You know, did it feel more comfortable? If so, how? Why? And then you sort of learn a bit more about yourself. You know,
Your Rio, she's becoming quite a competent and confident rigger over the last sort of 18 months or more, hasn't she?
I certainly think she's put a lot of effort into learning, and I think that's fantastic. You know,
It doesn't come for free. You've got to put in the time, and she's put in the time and the patience and the effort to study and learn, has she?
aye, and it's not easy, especially in saying that in this current kind of climate. But you know, you have to enjoy it. I think.
Mm.
I think she
Yeah.
has enjoyed it, and I think as well, I've enjoyed being on that journey with her. You know.
It's a journey together, though, isn't it? So it's not a journey that either of you take alone, as it were.
No, absolutely. And I think anyone who is kind of saying about kink, be it rope, be it anything else, I mean, it's particularly pertinent to rope. But the thing is that so much of what we do needs good communication. And if you're going on this journey with someone, you know, you need to communicate what you like, what you didn't like, what you felt worked, what you felt didn't work. So I feel that in exploring these things and learning new skill and all that kind of stuff has been good for us as a couple, and it has allowed us to hone in on a few select areas, you know, kind of like, right, okay, we like this, why, what worked, what didn't work. So rather than just like, oh, I've gone on shibaristudy.com and learned this pattern, or I've gone on the Dutchie, or I went to a workshop with whoever it is, rather than just I learned the pattern. It's more kind of, I did this, here's what worked for me, here's what didn't work for me.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get across is that there's a lot to it, and it's more than just learning a pattern.
Yeah.
It's more than just what that one specific tie is. You get into kind of discussions of anatomy, emotion. You know, there's really quite a lot to it. You know, that's kind of below the surface. You incorporate some of it, and it just kind of deepens what you've got there. Can be very enjoyable.
So it's mostly been, you know, if there's one thing that you can take, one sort of opportunity that you've had is that the last year has allowed you guys the time, the space to be able to continue that journey more so than if maybe you know you hadn't been locked indoors for a huge period of time.
Aye, I think so.
You know, last summer, you know, I can't believe it's been that long since we did an episode, but last summer, I spent a lot of time out in the woods, just relaxing and trying to disconnect from everything the world was throwing at us and kind of connect with myself and nature and just sort of tune out from the madness of the world we've been living in. And, you know, it gives you a lot of time to think about yourself and relationships and what you're doing. Gave me a lot of time to hunt around for lumps of wood. Always makes you popular with partners when you're forever bringing lumps of wood home, mate, you know. If you want to be popular with Eeyore, what you want to do is you want to head out for a walk and you want to come home with a manky lump of wood with a bit of rotten mould on it. They love that.
Oh, it's what you make of it, isn't it, really?
Well,
Which
yeah.
leads nicely on to the level of success you've had making things.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, you know, like you guys with the road, I live around the corner from somewhere where I've got access to a workshop, which has been a real blessing over the last year. And, you know, I was making, I think we spoke about it before, but I was just starting to learn how to make floggers, wasn't I? around the time of we recorded the last episode. It was just sort of a little DIY adventure. Well, with so much time in my hands, like you guys used a lot of it for, learning rope and connecting like that. I spent a lot of it foraging up the woods and looking at reclaimed wood and stuff like that, and making paddles and handles for floggers and all sorts of bits and pieces. So yeah, the only problem that means is because I spent a summer building, making stuff, making paddles, making floggers, making dragon's tails, making this, making that, making the other. And the only problem is that now means that because all the events have been closed and I completely lack the technical skills to set up an online shop or anything like that, I just made stuff. That's all I know how to do. I'm now living in a relatively small home, and I've got, stored away in places loads and loads of impact toys and stuff like that. So I finally got around to hopefully selling some of it. It's been about keeping busy, really. It comes back to like lockdown and everything that's been going on there, and it's about keeping occupied, isn't it? Keeping your mind and your body busy and healthy and focused on something and looking for the positives. And I think that's what it's about, whether you're making something for yourself, making something for friends or to sell, or spending time connecting with a partner through rope, or binging a DVD box set, or something like that. Whatever it is, it's about keeping your mind and your body busy in what is hopefully a healthy and positive way. I mean, how long since we did an episode, Burns? How long do you reckon? A year?
Probably, yeah. It has been quite a long time.
What do you think the future, the varying degrees of BDSM podcast looks like? It's virtual, isn't it? It's recorded remotely. Whatever it looks like it's recorded remotely for the time being.
I think there's quite a lot of potential there. I mean, the thing is, we don't, as we've kind of touched on, we don't live in the same city anymore. So it does make physical meetups that a little bit more difficult, even if they were allowed, But as I say, you kind of get around that in certain ways. And if anything, it affords us the luxury of looking at stuff online. Is that maybe more convenient for people in varying degrees? And also, while we're not a million miles away, where we've moved to gives us possibility of accessing slightly different social circles due to the different local areas that we're able to get to. So
you've got quite an active community where you've moved to, haven't you, really?
When it's running, I think that some of that would be more involving of some of the rope community. And so I think that would be quite interesting, because then rather than just two guys who are on BDSM scene, you've then got one guy who is more on the impact scene, one guy who's more on the rope scene. But also, I think the thing is it's not just because I'm primarily a rope bunny rather than a rope top or dome. It's just that different perspective, because you commonly do see quite a lot of male rope tops. Not totally, it's not complete market dominance.
A very het male led.
Aye. And there's a lot of spaces there, and you don't need to spend a great deal of time looking for them either. Talking to her about, she said about workshops and stuff, and she said, I've not had to scour the internet for hours looking for this stuff. It's not all that difficult to find.
No. Education has never been easier to access. BDSM based education has never been easy to access. It's been a blessing. It hasn't been a blessing. I take that back. I retract that statement. But you know what I mean.
It's easy to find stuff online, but as was said at the Clover's workshop, which I would heartily recommend to anyone looking for an introduction to rope, particularly as a rope bottom. It's I would say quite unique. So it would be very useful for a lot of people.
So back to the podcast and moving things forward. You were saying about the two of us, but it's always good, and we've always had more people, and I think maybe we've had 4 or 5 people on at a time. But I think with a remote format like this, certainly until we'd found our feet properly, that you wouldn't want more than 3 of you on, really, more than 3 of you on an episode at a time,
Oh,
just to make sure.
It's kind of easy to get sort of jumbled, I think.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't want more than 3 of you on at a time, would you? I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I think that seems sensible.
Hmm?
I think that seems like sensible amount, because it's quite, the more people you've got on, the more likely it is people to talk over one another, even accidentally, and it just makes editing a bloody nightmare.
What if we finally do what we always said we were going to do, and we maybe reach out to people and try and get a really special guest on every time, somebody who runs events, or an educator, or a performer, or just somebody with an interesting story or experience they might want to share about their kink journey. How does that sound? I'll even find the first one. I'll even find the first one, Burns, and then you can find the second one. How does that sound?
I think it's not a bad idea. I think it's something definitely worth exploring.
You know, we're not looking for superstars. You know, we're not looking for superstars of kink or household kink names. You know, just people who are genuinely interesting in terms of the view they bring, maybe their story that they've got to tell and are willing to share, their journey, their experiences. You know, people who maybe teach or people who make stuff. You know, people that we would find interesting. Hopefully, our would-be audience would find interesting too. That's my hope. What do you think? Is that too much? Am I aiming too high, Burns?
No, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I suppose the thing as well to sort of bear in mind with it is that people might well have things that they'd wish to plug. So, kind of the way if an actor goes on a talk show, they've not got a book they're trying to sell, I mean, I'm not saying that we become Kinky Book Club, but it's just that kind of people might be more likely to guest star or whatever if they're kind of getting something out of it, that kind of.
Yeah, no, completely. I get what you're saying. If you either teach or you make stuff, sell stuff, or you perform or create content creators, you want to be able to expose your product, expose yourself. You want to be able to expose yourself.
Well, I mean, some people do, don't they? I mean,
yeah.
But we're just going to be advertising OnlyFans at this point, are we not?
Leave it with me, mate. Leave it with me. I will find us an interesting first guest in about a month's time, and I will arrange a suitable time for the pair of you, and I'll make it work.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and then you've got to find a guest for the second one and make it work. If I manage to pull it off the first time, you've got to have a bash the second time. How does that sound?
It sounds like you're obsessed with wanking, but
you accept the varying degrees guest show challenge. I don't suppose.
Jokes aside, I mean, I think it's a good solid idea.
Yeah, because then we're not too crowded on the voices either. If you've got one guest person on each time and us two, we get good. Hopefully, we get a good variety of different experiences and opinions and views shared through the constantly changing guest person. And get really good. Hopefully, we get really diverse representation of experiences on, and learn a little something ourselves. This is one of the reasons why I set this up in the first place, was for my own benefit as much as anybody listening, so I can hear interesting things and I can learn from other people. So I think it's a really exciting thing that we could do for ourselves and for anybody who is bold enough to listen or who we're really grateful they take the time to listen.
I think that's a really good idea, and as you say, that was kind of your aim all along, so why not?
I'll tell you what, do you know what I haven't heard in so long?
Go on.
And you haven't even phoned me up. It's been about 10 months, mate, and not once have you phoned me up late at night to send me off to sleep with a drop of naughty. I sat by the phone, mate, for the first 2 months, every night. And then as the summer wore on, I started to lose hope that you would ever tell me another drop of naughty ever again. And now we're here like 10, 11, 12 months later. And I just don't know. If I'm ever going to hear anything like that ever again in my life.
See, the thing is, right, the whole Jock and Naughty thing started as a joke. It was derived from the Bad Sex and Fiction Awards. The idea of that, it was not to knock writers of erotica. It was to knock published big-name authors who were just writing kind of just the worst sex scenes in literary fiction. So the 9 worst phrases from the Bad Sex Awards 2018 shortlist.
So what is this? This is the...
Right, so number 3, right, they stay in this position for a long time. Anna sucking and slurping with the same lazy persistence you'd use on a gobstopper or a stick of rock. Well, what do you say to that?
It's not very sexy. So this is taken from the worst lines in erotica awards, you say?
No, like just in mainstream novels.
Oh, mainstream novels.
So it's every year since 1993, the Literary Review takes on the strenuous task of publishing the worst sex writing of the year. So
what's number 2 then?
So number 2 was from Killing Commendatore by Haruki Murakami. Again and again, semen poured from me, overflowing her vagina, turning the sheets sticky.
Sort of
I feel like I'm not really hamming this up enough.
Come on, really give it to me for number 1, mate. Really give me.
Right. Number 8. Right, this is a good one. Soon I was locked in, balls deep, ready to be ground down by the enamelled pepper mill within her.
What?
I know.
I was going to have a wank before bed. I don't think I'll bother now. Go on, number 1 then. Have you got number 1? You've given me number 3, 2 and 8, strangely.
Like a lepidopterist mounting a tough-skinned insect with a too blunt pin, he screwed himself into her.
Oh, God.
It's just so bad. The 2019 shortlist, he clung to her, crying, and then made love to her and went far inside her. And she begged him to go deeper. And no longer afraid of injuring her, he went deep in mind and body, among crowded organ cavities, past the contours of her lungs and liver, and shimmying past her heart, he felt her perfection. Rounded organ cavities. Jesus Christ.
That's weird. That's weird. And you know what? When you said he didn't fear hurting her, my immediate thought was he started this thing crying. I don't think he's got to worry about hurting her.
Just hurting her feelings, maybe. I don't know.
God knows. Dear God, maybe that's just my way of looking at things. I'll tell you what, do you know what I haven't heard in so long?
Go on.
And you haven't even phoned me up. It's been about 10 months, mate, and not once have you phoned me up late at night to send me off to sleep with a drop of naughty. I sat by the phone, mate, for the first 2 months, every night. And then as the summer wore on, I started to lose hope that you would ever tell me another drop of naughty ever again. And now we're here like 10, 11, 12 months later. And I just don't know. If I'm ever going to hear anything like that ever again in my life.
See, the thing is, right, the whole Jock and Naughty thing started as a joke. It was derived from the Bad Sex and Fiction Awards. The idea of that, it was not to knock writers of erotica. It was to knock published big-name authors who were just writing kind of just the worst sex scenes in literary fiction. So the 9 worst phrases from the Bad Sex Awards 2018 shortlist.
So what is this? This is the...
Right, so number 3, right, they stay in this position for a long time. Anna sucking and slurping with the same lazy persistence you'd use on a gobstopper or a stick of rock. Well, what do you say to that?
It's not very sexy. So this is taken from the worst lines in erotica awards, you say?
No, like just in mainstream novels.
Oh, in mainstream novels.
So it's every year since 1993, the Literary Review takes on the strenuous task of publishing the worst sex writing of the year. So
What's number 2 then?
So number 2 was from Killing Commendatore by Haruki Murakami. Again and again, semen poured from me, overflowing her vagina, turning the sheets sticky.
Sort of
I feel like I'm not really hamming this up enough.
Come on, really give it to me for number 1, mate. Really, really give me.
Right. Number 8. Right, this is a good one. Soon I was locked in, balls ready to be ground down by the enamelled pepper mill within her.
What?
I know.
I was going to have a wank before bed. I don't think I'll bother now. Go on, number 1 then. Have you got number 1? You've given me number 3, 2 and 8, strangely.
Like a lepidopterist mounting a tough-skinned insect with a too-blunt pin, he screwed himself into her.
Oh, God.
You know, it's just so bad. The 2019 shortlist, he clung to her, crying, and then made love to her and went far inside her, and she begged him to go deeper. And no longer afraid of injuring her, he went deep in mind and body, among crowded organ cavities, past the contours of her lungs and liver, and shimmying past her heart, he felt her perfection. Rounded organ cavities. Jesus Christ.
That's weird. That's weird. And you know what? When you said he didn't fear hurting her, my immediate thought was he started this thing crying. I don't think he's got to worry about hurting her.
Just hurting her feelings, maybe. I don't know.
God knows. God knows. Dear God, maybe that's just my way of looking at things. So, what do you reckon your final kind of thoughts are for lockdown and kink? You know, looking back over the last year, what are your reflections on kink in the last year?
Keep a stiff upper lip. Keep something else stiff just in case.
A drink.
I wasn't thinking of a drink, but aye, fair enough.
Yeah, no, it's certainly been a funny one, but you know, not just kink communities, but all communities adapt, and you know, people adapt, and relationships adapt, and you know, things might have changed, but they haven't gone away. And you know, I'm hoping that come July and August, we can be attending outdoor open air events such as O&I, you know, over, you know, there's a couple of outdoor kink festivals that I'd like to think that I'll be able to attend from July, August. You know, I don't think we're going to be attending any indoor dungeon events until around the same time, if that's still going. You know, sadly, we know of events, don't we, that have gone under and won't be starting up again.
One or two.
You know, but this is what people, you know, need to remember is that, like, yeah, you know, you see on the news and on TV about lots of retail and lots of stuff like that going under. But, you know, kink events often run by members of the community and barely make a profit. And people don't usually run kink events to get rich, do they?
No.
You know, it's not, you know, it's done for love, not money. And, you know, they're not the sort of businesses and venues or events that necessarily going to be able to get help. You know, these community-based events are going to be able to easily access help. And we know some events have gone under and some events aren't going to be coming back. And I'm worried for other events and other venues, you know, and there's a lot of, you know, small businesses but within the BDSM scene, from events and venues to performers, content creators, people who make equipment, toys, clothing. Oh God, the list goes on and on. Businesses, but really, they do online sales, but also they rely on having to be able to get out there to events, not just to events to trade, but for events to be running, for people to want to buy latex clothing to wear to events, or for people to want to buy new toys to show off at events, or new restraints, or new collars, and whilst people might be doing a lot more online shopping at the moment, and that's grand, there's a certain amount of stuff that people just aren't going to be buying if they've got nowhere to take it or go with it or use it. We say that, it's all gone virtual. There's a lot of people that are suffering for that as well. Businesses and creators. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a rant there, aren't I?
Well, it happens. I think sometimes you need to get it out, that's the thing. People are very frustrated with the state of the world right now. And, people are thinking, well, when am I going to be able to get out again? Am I going to be able to get out again? Is it going to be the same? Even pre-COVID, over the course of the first few years that we would have gone along to the same local events, we saw considerable change in who was going along. And there were a number of reasons for that, none of which we'll get into now, but it happens. So on that basis, I'm not entirely convinced that it will be any different. People might come and go, but people always come and go, and do you know what I mean? So
yeah, my thoughts on that though is when people always come and go, at least when events are running, the small little businesses within kink, like venues and traders, when people are coming and going and physical events are running, those businesses are thriving. It doesn't matter if it's the same people that are coming and going. When you've got a complete shutdown like this, we lose venues and we lose independent traders because they have to go and get other jobs and take on other types of work. It can't be good in that respect, can it? Really? I don't know. You might disagree with me. You're welcome to. We often disagree. It's what I love about our friendship, mate. It's what I love about our relationship. Is we never see wholly eye to eye.
But I think, like you say, there is that kind of respect. It's not just like, oh, well, I believe this, you believe that, right, fuck you. I know that quite a few people would, especially not just COVID related, but a lot of people have spoken recently about how there seems to be this kind of trend towards polarisation, and it's not just that people are kind of polarised in their arguments, but people extrapolate too far, It's like, all right, you said A, so you must agree with B, C, D, and E, and it's not always the case. So people end up ostracising people and, burning bridges and all that. When it's like, does that person actually believe all this shit that you've said they do? Not necessarily. And, I think that there's this kind of move towards demonising people one way or the other. I'm not talking about sides here. I'm not saying I am on side A or side B, but like there's just this kind of, you are on A side and that is not my side, so you're a devil and all that. But then people in the same breath will be like, your kink's not my kink, but your kink's okay by me, So it's like, well, how can you do that? But I suppose, people will say, oh, well, this kink doesn't impact on this and that, and they start talking about social-political factors, and it all gets a bit convoluted.
So I think we should round this episode up because we've had a good episode. It's not even that really. It's discussion that may or may not get aired. If it does, you can leave that in it to show the freewheeling speculation about who knows what we're going to do next. I certainly don't. But no, I know what I'm going to do. I am going to find somebody who would like to be a guest in about a month, and I'm going to set that date for two of you. And we're going to do it via Zoom, and we're going to get that locked on. I'll find somebody interesting, more interesting than the two of us, John. You'll see. I'll find us a good guest. I'll blow your socks off. Yeah?
Should it be grand?
Yeah. So, yeah, I look forward to that. And, you know, if we put this together in some form of a mini episode and it does go out at all, or it'll parts of the air or whatever, it would be great to hear what people think on that, or if people have got other suggestion formats or other experiences with, or if people have got experience with recording podcasts remotely, or any other opinions they want to share with us. They can obviously get hold of us. If they know us in person, they can get hold of us through the normal channels, the communities we're part of. Other people can get hold of us via FL. You know, our usernames are listed on, I believe, on our podcast channels. You know, you can also get to us on the Varying Degrees BDSM Podcast Instagram, or via FL, the Varying Degrees page on there. So, you know, we might get some good feedback that helps to steer us in the direction we're going in next, mate.
Mm.